Hello, everyone, and we are back with another episode of the Global Empathy Circle. The Global Empathy Circle that we have started on our page on mentoring and soft skills in Wiki will bring to you some hand-picked, curated topics on which we all believe and we have reason to believe that we are very united even when our circumstances, our ecosystems, our exact situations might be different. Because there is this common thread among us humans and more so among us women that perhaps run globally. There are those small things, there are those intuitions, there are those secret feelings, there are those camaraderie, there are those shared emotions that perhaps are truly universal. And our objective and our vision with this weekly Global Empathy Circle is to bring to you a one small bite every week, every Sunday evening, India time, in which we can discuss things that we have learned through our journeys in life, our small insights, our small wisdoms, and to bring to you that canvas through which you might find the color that resonates with you, through which you might find one line, one sentence, one inspiration, one virtual hand holding, one sentence of empathy that might see you through in your life, in your journey, in your day, in one small way. So with that objective in mind, we bring to you today the second episode of the Global Empathy Circle. Our topic today is actually very resonant and very inspired from what is really going on here in India right now. Now, just yesterday, we had the celebration, the Festival of Lights, as many of you know. And now it has actually become quite global in popularity that we celebrate this evening, the Diwali, with lighting the lamp. And in that process, metaphorically, we try to light that lamp within, to light that flame that is inside us. And to commemorate exactly that occasion, we have brought to you today the topic of the day, the light within. The light within in our Global Empathy Circle. Before that, let me introduce myself to you. I am Shinjini Sengupta. I'm the National President of Mentoring and Soft Skills at Women Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industries. I'm also the founder of Lighthouse, where I teach authentic storytelling, joyful change making, and creative leadership. And through storytelling, we believe that we also flame the fire that is within us, the soft fire that glows, that grows, and that shows us the way forward from inside. Today, the light within the topic will be hosted by Celia Fuller, who's a dear friend, an author, and a number of things, a healer, a spiritual person, and really, as I call her, my shaman girl. She has been there as a guiding light for many people in her community, outside her community, to all us sisters, and to all us in the Mentoring and Soft Skills National Council. And today she will bring to you this hand-picked, curated discussion on the light within. Celia, over to you.
Wow, Sanjini, thank you. That's a beautiful introduction. Absolutely. Happy Diwali, everybody across the world that's listening in and tuning in on this special episode. The light within, with the Diwali celebration, it's really all about battling the light and the darkness. And we have to ask ourselves, what is the darkness and what is the light? And everyone has a slightly different version of this and a different way of understanding how that might present for them. So we have a group of ladies across the world from England, India, Australia here tonight to speak about some of their perspectives on the light within. We're going to move straight over onto Susan and ask her some very pointed questions based on a few little conversations we had just before the show. So Susan,
Hi.
I'd love you to, how are you?
I'm good,
Before
thank
the
you.
show,
How are you?
Yeah, great. Thanks. Before the show, you mentioned this year you began seeing your external world quite differently. and that you saw it more as a bit of an illusion of your reality. Can you explain more on this and what you can see beyond that idea of the illusion?
Thank you. So, yeah, I think this year has been quite an eye-opener probably for a lot of people. For myself, it was very much those external things that I relied on to keep myself sane were kind of stripped away. And then what was left? And when you just said about the darkness and the light, and I now associate that with the darkness is pretty much my thoughts and my mind. If I let it, that mind can just be a bully mind. It can torment you, and you could be in that place of real suffering. If there's a way to just calm that and just notice that if you can just calm those thoughts, a lot of them, there's so many techniques out there. There was something I came across many years ago from Byron Katie about, is it true? And you analyze each thought. And if you really look at each thought, especially the ones that torment you, they're just not true. They're just absolute rubbish. Yet, if we can start doing that to our thoughts, then what's kind of left? So where I was coming from with it is the mind, if you let it, will just go astray and just torment you, and you just feel, but if you can start to just smooth that, what's left beneath, the presence, the observer, the feeling of peace. And sometimes you'll get it, and sometimes you'll get, when you're doing meditation, or when you're doing extreme sports, or when you're into a particular hobby that you might be totally absorbed in, playing with a young child, those moments of just being so present that your mind isn't thinking, that's what I like to think as the light within us. And then if you can get to a place where you can get that to flow within you, those times when you're on fire and you're in flow and you're just doing something and you're lit up, that for me is finding a light within us and then sharing that and passing that light on to others. I don't know if that kind of made sense.
Absolutely. I really acknowledge the idea that the mind and the mind clutter gets in the way of showing and shedding that light in all that you do. So in your workplace, how do you bring that part of your light into what you do and your passion in life?
This is interesting. There's kind of two things that I would say is my passion. My day-to-day work is an optometrist, so I test eyes for a living, and that's I've done for many years. So I don't feel like I need to think too much about the procedures of doing that. And each year I probably take a different theme for what I do when I'm at work. So in the past, it used to be if somebody comes to see me, they're going to have the best sight test before they leave. And this year, I've actually tried to be more present in the sight test. So literally, if they're coming in and they're sitting in front of me, to not be thinking about left, right, and centre, or even thinking, just to be present with who are they behind their thoughts and who am I behind my thoughts, and can I sit in that space? So many times you forget and you're not in that place and your thoughts run riot. But if I can just get to that place, it's a very interesting and a different experience. And out of work, where I love to do kind of this stuff and speaking, and yeah, I just get lit up. There's certain things when I start speaking about that I realize that I just get into this place, and that's what I was talking about earlier about the flow and the excitement comes within me, like when I get it, because I'm like this. So it kind of slightly different in my two areas.
Sure. Yeah. Great. Oh, thank you so much for sharing. There's a few things that I probably could ask extra questions of, and I'm sure all the other ladies listening would ask you more questions too. But we'll move on to another speaker. But thank you so much. That's really exciting that you've changed what you do in your work and then seeing the reflection back as those changes occur when you're coming more into your present moment. And I think we can all start to focus more on that as well. Thank you. All right. Now, in our beautiful special group and in our introduction, we had the CEO of the Lighthouse. What a name, what a perfect name for the light within. Is the light within beaming out as in the lighthouse and the beacon of life and hope. This is your opportunity, Sanjeeni, to share with us a little more about your journey. I know you to be an author, and your book went into a film, and all that you have passion for. You mentioned at one point that you started to trust your intuition more and in that journey of writing the book, your intuition burst out and you felt lighter and lighter in yourself. So I'd like to ask you a few more questions about that idea of feeling lighter in yourself and what process you went through to bring more of that intuition forward and to bring the light out, whether it's in your writing or anything you do. Can you talk a little bit more about that process?
Sure, Celia. And what a difficult and what an interesting question is that. I do feel that the light within applies a lot when we do any sort of creative work. And writing a full-scale novel, when I wrote Elixir, was definitely one of those things where you don't have guidance. It's a blank canvas. Nobody would even give you those straight lines that you have to fill up. You know, this is the length, this is the volume, these are the characters, you play with it. It is really like you're playing in air, with air. And you can create anything, you can create nothing. And you also realize that the two aren't so different. It's a very, very complex process. I don't know if I would be able to even hold them in the two hands of words and to be able to give shape and meaning to it, but I'll try. I read somewhere that, the term called flow, which is perhaps seated exactly in between a kind of boredom and a kind of anxiety. So if you have nothing going on and the water is just without any ripples, it's boredom. And when the waves are so big that it can drown you, it is anxiety. But flow is exactly the space where you are having a good time. And you are having such a good time that you don't remember anything about time anymore. You are one with the thing. And when it came to writing Elixir more specifically, that is something that I did encounter a lot. For one, you have heard this story, but it is a very, I actually derive inspiration from that bit of my own life. The way Elixir came to me is that I was seated in an office cab waiting for the drop back home in the midnight. My office got over at 11 in the night. My daughter, who was like 2 years old then, would be asleep by the time I would come home. So in that morose and depressed state, any other day I would let that pass. I don't know what happened that day, that I pulled out the BlackBerry from my office laptop and I punched in those first couple of words thinking that, okay, fine, let me jot down this idea. We'll see where it goes. And before I knew, before I remembered, when I lost count of time, the car was at my doorstep and I got down and I realized I have goddamn 2000 words on my BlackBerry actually punched in. And that became a story that then became a film which went to Cannes Film Festival, and then that got me a book offer. I signed the contract first because the publisher believed it belongs to a novel. And I was like, what are you even talking about? So I actually signed it first and then wrote my manuscript. But here is this thing about flow, that it happens through you. It doesn't happen because you are doing it. It happens to you. And if that is not the light within, what is? I do feel that the light within is very intuitive, but since I can speak for myself as a person, I do not know how universal it is, but I do suspect it's very universal. Our lives are such hustles, and the way we have parametrically measured success and wealth and everything else, it's very easy to look for hard evidence all the time. What have I got done through the day? So where is my product? Where are the things on the table, on the paper, on the computer screen? Where is it? Where is the output? What is the measurable? Where is the parametric? But this also has a catch. We often lose out on that soft, very, very intuitive, very, very quiet voice inside. In fact, even for interpersonal relationship, I at times find that, I have something going on which says that, okay, fine, maybe, but I trust that person until I have hard proof, because I find it very difficult to tell myself that, okay, fine, my body is trying to say something, hold on and listen. So yes, creativity is that inner light in a good light, but there are so many times I don't listen to my inner light, and I can tell it has always been a bad decision in the hindsight. Thank you for that question, Celia.
Oh, my pleasure. Because I have an extra little bit of a question. Because we have so many viewers listening in to all us women who have different career edges, different paths that we've trod. And each of us are finding our way, and you finding your flow and your intuition, which you start to feel is the light coming through you and guiding and putting out there. What would you say to women, but also men, about trusting that light and that flow in your day-to-day life?
Yes, first, thank you for mentioning that it's not for women, but also for men. I think it's about that soft femininity or right side of our brain, which both men and women have. So thank you for clarifying that. Really, it is for everyone. What to do to listen to it? I have no one answer, but as I again, do a lot, I learn when I teach. So I teach programs in Lighthouse where I teach storytelling. And the thing I keep saying is that write it down, whatever it is. I remember when I went to meditation once, I told my teacher that, I don't know what I'm feeling because I'm in denial. And she told me, then accept to yourself that you are in denial. So at least admit to yourself that you are in denial. So denial is the opposite of admission, but even accepting or admitting that I'm in denial is one step ahead. Writing it down in any form and shape. It doesn't have to be a list. A list is linear and a list doesn't work. Our human brain is more 360 degree. So it can be a word web. It can be anything. It can be, unrelated spots of blotches of words anywhere. You don't have to go back to it. But once you write it down, at the end of the day, if you just write down 3 things that happened that were significant, 3 things you feel grateful about, 3 things that you wonder about, 3 things that made you stop and think, you slowly tell your inner smaller version of yourself who is inner and who is invisible and who's guiding you. You perhaps tell her that I'm listening to you. And there is a trust that builds inside. Because as much as we put all our efforts to build trust outside, we have to get out of our own way. And one way to get out of our own way is to kind of build that space of trust where I tell myself through admitting on words that here is how I feel. I feel upset. I may not know why, but at least admit that I'm feeling upset. I think that does help. And soon enough, you will get a beautiful story out of it, even if it is only yourself you are telling that to.
Great. That's fantastic support for everybody, and a path where they can take a practical tip along to bring more of that intuitive flow through, which becomes that sense of lightness that lifts up any burdens. As of course your book talked a lot about, the different burdens that a mind is thinking and processing and coming through, and the birth of your Lighthouse business, which is fantastic. Thank you for that very much, Sanjeeni. So we're going to change tact a little bit now, because it is Diwali and it's such an amazing worldwide celebration. And yet there are many people across the world who may share the globe with different people from the continent of India. Not everyone really fully understands what actually happens in Diwali, in that celebration. So we're going to go to Davina and ask her, what does Diwali mean to you? What actually happens on the ground in village life or city life in India? Davina.
Thank you, Celia. My experience in terms of Diwali is also very limited. It's practically what I've seen on television or in my family, but it largely seems to be similar in terms of, it's just a celebration of lights, as we call it. We just celebrate, it's like homecoming for one of the more revered gods, so to say, Lord Ram. So after this entire turmoil that we celebrate to Dussehra, which is of the victory of good over evil, it took a time of about 20 days for Lord Ram to return back home. And that's the entire journey, the end of that journey that's celebrated on Diwali. And while that's the story behind it, I don't think a lot of people of my generation really look forward to that story, or the mythological elements of it. For us, it's more about just lighting the whole house up on a new moon day, and just ensuring that our house is the brightest shining one out there in the entire locality, and that's the aim. So for us, it's all about 200 candles and 500 diyas, and that's the celebration that we have here. Of course, there's a puja for those of us who do follow religious practices diligently. There's about a half an hour puja that we do, where we just honor Lord Ganesh and Lord Parvati, and just ask that they keep their blessing on us, just keep us healthy throughout the year, throughout the ages. That's about it. It is a festival of lights, and there's a lot of light outside, but it is true that when the entire family comes together for that one event, I'm sure you experience it at Christmas or any festival that you celebrate. You experience that when the family comes together, you do reflect on where you come from, and that really makes you think about how you want to go forward. So it is an amazing experience, all jokes aside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understood it when you mentioned Christmas. For the Christian calendar, the lights are very similar, because many houses light themselves up and have their bit of competitions, but it's also a gift-giving time and a family connection time where we're sharing a lot of love and connection. And if I'm right, I vaguely remember that there is some gift-giving in Diwali as well, with that sharing of that love.
Oh, yes. That's just about any festival. We just need a reason to pamper each other. Just give us any cue and we'll be like, oh, yes, let's just shower all our love on everybody that we know.
Beautiful. So sharing your light with all your family and with all your village. Fantastic. Thank you. It's always beautiful seeing all the lights. I get a few videos of the different celebrations. So it's always, and everyone's so happy. So it's so beautiful. Thank you, Davina. So as you can hear, there's so many different versions of sharing love and sharing the idea of an internal light that just can glow and grow. And with that, we start to understand that we are perhaps a more deeper person or vessel than we can consider at times when we do get our very busy, muddled minds. So with that in mind, I'd like to cross over to Siobhan. She talked a little bit before the show about this amazing spark she feels inside. And that spark, obviously, when we know what a spark is something that begins and then goes bursting into light. So Siobhan, can you talk a little more about that spark of light that comes inside with the passions that you share?
Yeah, I think for me that when we talk about the light within, I think there's a reason why we say, you know, when someone is talking about, like Susan was saying before, you can see it in someone, when someone's talking about the thing that they're passionate about. Where I come from, we say you can see their face light up, and for me that it's a saying that says, you know, like from inside, something from inside is so excited, your passion's there, that people can actually physically see you, kind of like your face light up. And for me, that's what I think of when I think of like a light within. I think about the things that I'm passionate about. And I think in sort of like my work terms, we say in order for someone to be able to change their behaviour, there has to be three things that come together. And one of them is it has to be the right message, it has to be the right place, and it has to be the right time. And that's when sort of like change happens. And for me, that's when the light goes on, if you like, because if one of those is missing, you might get a little bit of the message, you might get a little bit of the light, but you won't get the full picture. And until the light's shining, you can't have the sort of like full picture, really. And the other thing for a light is you can't see a light when the light's already on, if that makes sense. You need dark in order to see the light. So I think it's that kind of recognizing that sometimes things aren't, this year has shown us all, things are not the best that they can be. You know, regardless of how well your family is, how well you're connected to your family, how well your personal life's going, how well your work life's going, we've all been impacted this year in one way or another by what's going on with the sort of like pandemic. And I think while it's been absolutely awful, and my heart really goes out to people who've lost somebody, I think it's like Susan said, it's also kind of like in that darkness has been a bit of an opportunity to see things a little bit differently. And that's for me, it's like the light shifted a little bit. It's become a little bit less about me, and about us. And that's about, maybe this was the time when this was the right message, the right place and the right time for us to actually receive that message and to hear that. Because the message isn't different. The message about connecting to other people, the message about holding on to your passions and talking about your passions and driving your passions and waking that's always been there. That hasn't changed at all. It's just that for a long time, we haven't, I say we, I mean we sort of like globally, people haven't necessarily seen it. So that darkness that's kind of come with the pandemic has allowed that little bit of light to shine. So for me, it's about that kind of like having the light is the thing that you need for you to connect everything together. We've got all the bits and pieces. Sometimes there's the right message out there, there's a right place for it, there's a right time for it, but that light needs to shine on all of them at once for us to be able to sort of like grow and make a change.
Wow, that's you're right. What can I say? That's such a powerful message, and it hits me just as big as last week's one, when the power of the smile that you shared. In your work, because you're working so personally with people and making a lot of support, but also I'm sure you see some transformational change in them. How many, or not so much how many, but share a little bit of a nuance of when you've helped somebody by you sharing your light and you finding all those elements that just switch on and is that catalyst of change. How do you see a person when they've changed, how they share that change with others? I'm sure you get some stories how the life just goes on with this beautiful ripple effect and the power of that help and support that we can give as a human. Can you share a little bit about that?
Absolutely, because I work in sort of like substance misuse services. So we have our substance misuse service, which is treatment, and that's about getting people to the place that they want to be. And I say they want to be, not I want them to be. It needs to be their place where they want to be. So it's about supporting people and empowering people to get to the place where they want to be. And then what we do is we have what we call recovery communities. And within that recovery community, they're the people who have changed their lives. Now, from the outside, that might not look like a great deal to somebody else. If you're really, financially successful and you're living in the best part of town with a really big house and a really, fancy title in your job and everything, some of those changes, those transformations in someone else's life might not look very big to you, but for that person internally, they're huge. And for the people that that love them and care about them, they're absolutely massive. So one of the things that we do is we have a recovery community where we call them recovery champions, and they're peer mentors. So what we want to do is make recovery visible for people, because if you're in the sort of like deep depths of your sort of addiction, it's really, really hard to see that light. And it is that light at the end of the tunnel. It's really hard to see that because there's everything else pressing down on you. And myself, as a person who comes from a theoretical point of view, I can talk all the talk about, all the chemical interactions and all that, and I can do all the therapeutic things, but I've never lived it. I don't have lived experience. And I think that's where that light comes within the recovery community, is not from us as workers, if you like, but from the people with lived experience. Because sometimes when someone's really struggling and they're in the darkest point, somebody else who's been there to be able to say, look, I hear you, I feel you, I know exactly what that feels like. This is what I did to help me get out of it. Or maybe you've just got to sit with that and you've just got to let that pass. You've got to, that advice and that support from somebody else who's been there is way more valuable than anybody else, because basically what they're doing is they've kind of got their light now, haven't they? Their light moment has come. They're taking their light and they're shining it on somebody when they're still in that dark place. So for me, that transformational, it's about not judging it from the outside, because it isn't my transformation, it's someone else's. It's how much they feel, and people will tell you how much their life has changed. And also then it's really important to give people the opportunity to share that with others. one, for other people who are still going through treatment, but two, for them as well, because people now are passionate about being in recovery. People are passionate about not using drugs or not drinking. They want to share that. And it's that ripple effect. It's giving people that opportunity to share their light, really, and that supports everybody along their journeys.
Yeah, that's wow. Yeah, thank you so much. That's a really vital message. And especially we're hearing from a very diverse lot of speakers with different aspects of the community that they touch. And to be able to hear, and the audience hear, that even in those darker points of addiction and abuse of the addiction or substances, that there are pathways of light, there are pathways of sharing that. And again, it's that sense of uplift. And I think this is where this group, this Wiki group, and our sharing the Global Empathy Group is really bringing in a very diverse and whole view of society and how we can impact just by us sharing our different personal stories. So your story is wonderful to share, and I really hope the listeners gain something and get a little bit of a boost and are willing to share their light in the same way, their experiences and the wisdom they drew out of that. Thank you, Siyabon.
Thank you.
Of course, the wisdom that Siyabon shared of different people understanding one another's experiences that are coming on, we can share in our workplace and we can share in our day-to-day activities with different people. You don't have to be a therapist of any kind. You are the therapist, you are the individual. And as Siyabon last week talked about, is that one smile that goes deeply into another and says, I see you, I hear you, is a way that we can transfer our sort of inner light to another. So I'd love to turn over the conversation and the sharing with Ratna and ask her, Ratna, what do you understand about the light within, and how does that understanding propel you through your different expressions, through the multiple hats that you have in society?
Thank you, Celia. It's so wonderful to hear everyone say so many beautiful things as well, and especially when it's Diwali, it's really fitting to have this conversation. But Diwali is celebrated every day, I would say. Our light that we have in, for me, it's really the free gift that we have to give to people, the environment, everything that we touch in our lives, and it costs nothing. It really doesn't cost us anything. The issue is we have lots of clouds come over all the time. Sometimes they're low, sometimes they're really dark, like Siobhan also said. Also, everyone mentioned about COVID, etc. So the light within, for me, is we are already born with the light within us. However, we don't actually know the power of the light within us until we're tested to see what that light is. Three things for me: the light within us, they can be expressed: love, compassion, and kindness. With those three things, it helps, for me, you keep to that core, to yourself. And it doesn't matter whether you're doing it in a, people tend to say, I think you said it really nicely, Celia, from a therapy point of view, and you can only feel that in a therapy point of view. However, I do work in a corporate environment. I work, my job is to change culture, and you cannot change culture via organizational systems. And that does not work whatsoever, because at the core of every system is a human being. Every human being has their story. Every human being also has their light as well. I'm very blessed to have the job that I do. And I know Siobhan mentioned spark as well, but it's really using my light to spark somebody else and not wanting to have credit for it also. Because when we spark something in somebody else, that's when the multiplier effect happens as well. And it's so beautiful to see people who really, in my job, I meet a lot of people who don't believe in themselves, and they think you have it all fitted together and everything's fine. It's not. We all have our journey. And I think Sinjini said it many times as well. The way that I shine my light is to share my story with the people that I'm trying to influence. I can't make them do anything, exactly like Siobhan said, but what I can do is influence them with the energy that I radiate with my light as well. And just if there's that tiny little bit of connection, of that human connection with that person, you have no idea what kind of energy it's building with them. I had a beautiful story this week. I'm actually taking on people globally for a project that I've been working on as well. It's got nothing to do with working for a corporate company, honestly. I interviewed this young lady from Brazil, and she's worked with me a little bit, not so much. I offered her the job and she was in tears. She was absolutely in tears. And the best feeling that you can get for your light to get shinier is to see that smile. It's absolutely priceless to see that smile on somebody else's face. And now, how much energy have I given to somebody else, or they've given to themselves by now believing in themselves as well? And every light that we can shine for everybody means we make a safer place for people to live in, a safer environment of how we actually save our environment with all the chaos that's going on in the world as well. And I think Siobhan mentioned it last week, we just need to be kind. So light is free, it comes and goes, it gets tested, and it has to be tested. Otherwise, we don't come out of our comfort zone. And then we really know what impact we can have on people.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your light. And I know from talking to you that you do share it a lot in the corporate environment, and we can very often think that there's not opportunities in that very staid environment that's more analytical. Yet when we get in more contact with ourselves, we can share the generosity of that inner spark, that inner sense of self within any environment. And that's what I think, if as a society we can remember that and just generously share it. And that's when you mentioned the word, the gift, it is that gift of light. And with the Diwali, it's about turning on the light, but certainly I see many candles and gifting that candle, even in the Buddhist or the Namaste, the light in you sees a light in me. Well, no, the light in me sees a light in you, and you're sharing and honoring and celebrating that path. Mm-hmm. So thank you very much for that.
My pleasure.
Now, because I'm in Australia speaking, I cannot see all the people that might be on the call. So I just want to check, do we have Maushimi with us today on our group chat? Can anyone see, is Maushimi in?
No, Maushimi is not in. But Celia, we would love to hear from you what you think of the light within.
Yes.
And we all know you have so much to share, and you do that as your work, as your vocation.
Yes, thank you. I certainly will. There are so many aspects I could talk about, but I think it comes from the very beginning, before we take a body. What are we before we take physicality? And I certainly believe that we are a divine spark, one spark of the great whole that downloads into a physical body, and we have an experience on earth. And with that, our role is to bring that spark in that comes into a very dense, more physical body, to bring the light through every atom and cell and every expression. And as it's been mentioned, I think it was Susan talking about the very busy, muddled mind. As we go through life, we tend to take on the thoughts of other people, the emotions and the behaviours of other people, which then starts to shroud our light. We can lose ourselves. And our role is to slowly bring that light. We are always the light. It already is us. We are already enlightened. And of course, the great teachers that have come on this globe have talked about that, learning, what is that dark and what is that light? And from what I can understand, the word Jesus Christ, as soon as Jesus became the Christ, that means one filled with light. So he brought a presence to him in his day-to-day interaction. And the same with Gautama Buddha, Gautama Siddhartha, that was his name, but then he became the Buddha, again, illumined with light. So we have this reference through all of our different cultures, different religions. And I'm sure with the saints, and even with Diwali, with Ramachandra, as he's battling the light and dark. Is he battling the external light and dark? To be actually successful in the idea of war, you have to battle that inside as well. So it is within that journey of unraveling the cloudy moments of our life, the programming, the patterning, the belief systems that we've taken on from everyone else, we begin to fill more with light. And our light then emanates into our personality and out into the world, and it also then changes our mind states. Then we get more intuitive flow because we're becoming more one with who we really were before we took breath. And it's also where we go when we die. We have a return to the light substance, the light consciousness that we were. And I certainly think that every one of us in our journey is about becoming enlightened, and that it is available to all of us, not just the great masters, because in fact we came in as great masters and we can return as great masters as we do the passage of life and work through the different systems, the different understandings, and shed that light and that wisdom as it comes and wells up in us to our different day-to-day interactions. Of course, with my work, as you mentioned, Sinjini, I work more in a counselling, healing model where I use a lot of extra abilities that I have gained over time, you know, to have deeper insight into the soul records of a person and their soul journey and how they map belief systems which are shrouding or causing them not to be the best version of themselves. And within that, then I am the bridge of light energy that comes through me, is of me, into the other person. And if I can shine like a lighthouse, just as you do, into that person, then it lifts them up enough that they can see past their dark parts, their confused aspects, to then grab hold of a safe harbour and safe pathway through. And so that's where I work with the sessions. And of course, anything else I do is always about the journey of the spirit. So that's sort of that's definitely my gift. And I love sharing that part of myself. So thank you very much for the question. And for all those who are listening, we're coming to the end of our show now, of all the people who have spoken and shared their beautiful gift of knowledge, the path of their work and how that light resonates with them. I've got a couple of questions for you to think about and how you interpersonalize your journey forth. And those questions are, what does the light within mean to you? How would you wish to see other people's light? How would you wake it up or support it and strengthen them? And what pathways have you found that brings out your light expression? How can you bring it out more to feel more aligned, more empowered in that journey? I hope that all of our stories today have given you a little bit of insight, a little bit of inspiration to take your journey forward. And I really, really hope that you tune in to next week's episode when we set another topic, mystery topic to you guys at the moment, but very soon it will be announced on the wiki page as well as Sinjini's Lighthouse. And I really think that if you tune in and share more and more of these panel sessions, that you'll gain and have quite a connection with a beautiful sisterhood, womanhood. We also talk for all genders, all cultures. We're open to everything. And I think you'd just love to join us here. Thank you so much.